Hello and welcome back to the Application Insider channel. I've got another student interview for you today, and this one is fantastic. They're all fantastic. I cannot get over how wonderful these interviews have been. Today, I'm talking with Annie Robison. She just went through the spring 2021 match, and she is sharing what she did in her application process to make sure that she really, truly stood out to directors and that she explained to them why she would be a good fit in their program. This took a lot of effort and research on her part, but her insights are so spot on about how you can do the same while you're working on your application. So Annie's got some wonderful tips to share about how she narrowed down the programs she wanted to apply to, the effort and the techniques and the methods that she used working on her application to make sure that everything was put together for the applications that she was interested in, how she met the deadline, and how ultimately she got a match to a great program that is going to be a really wonderful fit for her. So let's listen to Annie's tips about how you can create an application that will stand out. All right, I am so excited to welcome Annie Robison to the Application Insider podcast and YouTube channel. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. All right, so I'm so excited to hear what you've got to share with students. Let's just start with a brief introduction. Where are you in the country or in your dietetics education pathway? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I am from Chico, California, and I just graduated last Friday from the DPD program at California State University, Chico. So I'm really, really blessed that I got to go to school, in my community. So that was really just such a huge blessing to me, and just had a great experience there. And now I'm excited to be able to share that here on the podcast.
Okay, awesome. So, not to sound like a personal statement question, but how did you come to choose dietetics as your major? And how did you choose this career that you're heading into?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted a career that really involved serving people. And I think that's really a common theme with a lot of dietetic students, but I knew that I really wanted a people-focused career. I knew that I wanted to be in the medical field. And I'd really always had a long-held interest in nutrition and in medicine. And I felt like dietetics really blended those two just so perfectly. I'm also a huge science nerd, so dietetics was a perfect career for that as well. So that's kind of Reader's Digest version of how I got into dietetics.
Definitely. It's a good blend of the science and the people. There's also opportunities for education and some fun. So sounds like you are going to be able to experience all of those things and bring them all into your career. That's great.
Yes.
Okay, so you just went through the spring 2021 match.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit. Well, we're just going to move into your application experience and how all of that was.
Okay.
So first off, how did you decide where to apply or even just the number of programs to apply to? How did you narrow things down?
Yeah, so I kind of knew going in probably like a year or so in advance, really, that I wanted to aim for maybe 3 to 5 programs, no more, no less, just to be safe, but not to overwhelm myself also. I knew for sure that I wanted a clinically focused program. So that was kind of like one of those bare minimum goals that the program had to have, was having a clinical focus. I also ideally wanted an academic medical setting. Just so I could see a really broad variety of different specialties and complex cases. I also really wanted to work in an area that had a lot of ethnic diversity, or that was, socioeconomically disadvantaged, because that's something that's really important to me in my future career is getting to work in that kind of community. So I knew that I wanted to choose an internship that was, ideally in that kind of location. So I would say those were my big things. Beyond that, I was also looking for an internship that really showed commitment to some of my core values, such as being patient-centered, having a focus on community service, and just, really putting people first, and serving others as kind of a focus. And then also, I was just really looking for programs with those specialized rotations, such as metabolics or metabolism, because that's something that's of interest to me. So those are kind of some things that I looked for in programs. I don't know if do you want me to talk a little bit about why I chose specifically the program that I got matched to? for those reasons?
Yes, but before you even get into that, I love what you said about wanting a clinically focused program, and then even more specifically, an academic-based or not profession, an academic-based setting. So I'm not going to announce for you, but you are in a university hospital.
Yes.
So I love that specificity, and I think it's so key for students to know, just understanding those elements of what you're looking for, whether it's elements like that, or like you said, your own values that you want to incorporate into your education and your career, that it's okay to have those in mind as you are looking for things. Not only in mind, but that you looked specifically for programs that met those criteria. I think sometimes students can focus on, I don't even know what the word is, like maybe less personal elements, like I have X number of dollars to spend on this, and that becomes obviously very important. Or I am, you know, I feel like this is the geographic location that will be best for me, obviously also important. But it's totally okay to also be like, clinical is where it's at for me, and that's where I want to be. And then even more specifically, seeing a really broad range of things, which is more likely to come up in a teaching hospital, or being in a certain area that is going to put me in contact with these types of people and situations. I love that you included that, because it shows people that those elements are just as important as some of the, maybe again, I don't know if less personal is the word, but that's what's coming to me. Less personal, of like, this is the financial situation, this is the family situation, things like that. So I love that you included that in your search. Thank you for just kind of
Yeah,
describing how that was for you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and then like you said, if you want to name all the programs you applied to, it's totally up to you, but what are some other elements that kind of took you down to the next phase of that choice?
Yeah. So, once I knew that those were kind of the main things that I was looking at, I was able to narrow it down to 4 programs that I applied to. Um, and, all of them were in areas that were, really ethnically diverse. Several were in, really kind of, impoverished areas, or areas that were just dealing with a lot of things like food insecurity, or just, people living, below the poverty line. So I was really, interested in working that kind of environment. So, all of them were in that setting. And then, all of them were an academic medical setting, with obviously a clinical focus, and all had some of those specialized rotations like metabolism, that I was interested in. So the one that I did end up getting matched to, which was Baylor University Medical Center, it definitely, met those criteria of, being in the medical setting. Dallas is a very diverse city. There's a lot of, Hispanic, Black, other, ethnic and racial identities in that city. And so that was really exciting to me to get to work with, a diverse group of people there. And then I also was really attracted to, on the program's website, they had stated one of their goals was to prepare graduates who demonstrate a commitment to community service. So I was like, well, I'm all there, that's me. And, they also offered some of those, specialized rotations as well. So just definitely a great fit for me and my goals and what I was looking for.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good fit. Um, How did you go about deciding these areas offer kind of that diversity element that I'm looking for? Was it virtual open houses, or speaking with directors, or looking at population data?
Yeah, I did look at a lot of population data. I did also talk with the directors. I was like, what do you see on a daily basis? Because, a lot of them, they aren't just the directors. They're also, dietitians working on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'd ask them, like, what do you see on a daily basis? Do you see a lot of diversity and variety? And say, oh, yeah, we see a lot of, this or that, or we have this one population of immigrants from this part of the world. And, our menu system is also in this language. And just really cool stuff like that, that their website wouldn't necessarily say. And then, yes, I did look online at some like population websites that would show demographics of, percentages of people who identified with particular racial identities, or who lived, at or below the poverty line, that kind of stuff, just to kind of get a feel for where I was applying. And that really helped.
Okay. So for those of you who want that type of experience, That is an excellent question to ask a director in an open house, in an email, whatever. So, I mean, get that information if you're looking for it. And if you can't find it from the director, look at Google because Google knows everything.
Yes.
Awesome. I love that approach. Okay, when it came to your application, getting ready for the spring 2021 match, when did you start like really diving deep into putting that together?
Yeah, so I started my personal statement, and by started, I mean like wrote a few sentences in April of 2020, or around that time, because I thought, I want to at least get it started.
Mhm.
And then I did probably the bulk of the work over the summer, maybe around June, July, somewhere around that time, just while I was off school before the classes started again. And it was also during that time that I did one of your workshops where, we went through the personal statement together and did all that different steps and checking and everything. So that helped as well. So I would say, yeah, a lot of my work started, this summer before application season, which is just shy of a year, I would say. So it's a good place to start. And I started the die-cast part of my application probably in October, while the fall match window was still open. So I just went in and inputted a bunch of my information, and then obviously it closed, and so I couldn't really work on anything after that until it reopened again for spring match. But that's kind of what I did, during that time to prepare beforehand.
Mhm. All your data carried over though when it reopened for spring.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I have heard one student say that was not the case, and I felt very
Ooh.
terrible for them. But I have
Oh.
always understood that it all carries over. I've had a DICUS account for years now, and obviously I've never submitted it, but everything I've ever put in there has always carried over. So students, you can get into DICUS before your match, start putting stuff in. Maybe save the information in a Word document. So if worse comes to worse, it's just a copy paste situation. But love that you started early and took advantage of just jumping in there, seeing what it's like. Because for the spring match, it feels like a very short time frame. It opens early December for spring, and then it's due February. I think for fall match,
Yes.
it opens in July, which for some reason, July to September feels longer than December to February, but I'm sure it's the same amount of time. So yeah. Okay. Love that you started early. And also like that you kind of focused at first on sections that you thought would take more time. So you had more time to donate to them. Donate, dedicate to them.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. When it came to your application, other than maybe just the time that was involved, are there any areas that you had specific concerns about or that you needed to address in some way?
Yeah. Let me think about that for a minute. So I think the biggest thing is, and I know like pretty much every student goes through this. I mean, I think every student does, is the idea of like, how do I do this? It's a huge process. It feels very overwhelming. And, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like overly difficult in any one particular way. It's just so much at one time. And it's really hard to summarize yourself and all of your amazing accomplishments because, we all worked so hard for this. And trying to fit that into 500 words succinctly and uniquely is just such a challenge. So I think that, I really went through the same thing that I think a lot of students go through is just that, like, how do I write this? How do I summarize myself properly? How do I know what experiences are most important or most, beneficial to talk about? Because, if you're, a lot of you out there listening, maybe like me, where you had a lot of, little experiences or things that, contributed to who you were, but that maybe weren't directly related to, what you wanted to do or something like that. And so it's kind of, hard to figure out like, what do I talk about? How much do I talk about it? What do I bring out of that experience? And then also, I think one thing that I struggled with and that I know a lot of people struggle with is how do I make my, why I want to be an RD story different enough that directors will sit up and take notice? Because I think a lot of us can say, well, I want to help people. And, that's a common response. But how do I say it in a way that really catches the director's attention and really makes me stand out from other people? So
Mhm.
I would say those are my biggest concerns and struggles going in. And then, yeah, just whatever questions you may have following up from that.
Yeah. Well, I think, yes, it's a huge application, but even when you're trying, like, it feels like there's a lot going on, but then, like you said, you try to kind of summarize everything that you've worked on, everything you've put into this. It's almost like there's still not enough space in the application, as big as it is, to account for everything. Um, so sorry, I'm going to break this into kind of two parts. It's a big application. And like you said, just kind of getting started can feel really intimidating. Was there anything you did that help make that feel more manageable? Or is it just kind of like you have to get in and get your hands dirty?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as the personal statement part of it, which I think is obviously like probably the hardest part for most people,
Yeah.
um, I just copied and pasted the usual diecast questions into a Word document and just started writing.
Mhm.
And I just kind of work on a paragraph at a time. And if I got stuck on something, I'd leave it and start working on another paragraph, and then go back later when I had a burst of inspiration.
Mhm.
And that worked really well for me, just working a piece at a time. But also, I think both for personal statement and for diecast, asking for help was like the best thing that I ever did. This is not a process that you just do alone and
Mhm.
complete as an island. um, it's like I said, it's a lot, and there is no shame in asking for help. I mean, everybody, even the smartest, most well accomplished, well organized student needs help with diecast and with the personal statement. It's just almost impossible to do it alone. So I obviously reached out to you and utilized your resources to help with a lot of that. I also used some other companies and sources like All Access Dietetics. I used some campus resources to help with editing and cutting things down a little bit in my personal statement. I got several eyes on my application.
Nice.
My mom, my dad, my DPD director, department chair, classmates, anybody I could. And then I also just talked with the current interns of the programs that I was interested in, usually at open houses and stuff, and just ask them, what did you do for your personal statement? What did you do that you feel like made you stand out to the directors? So that's definitely one one gem that I can pass on to anyone listening, is to just ask for help, and ask the current interns, because they will know better than anybody
Mhm.
some good things to include.
Yeah, I like that perspective of not just asking the current interns about their experience in the program, but then being like, "Well, you got into this program. What did you do? How did you?
Yes.
What worked for you? What advice can you share?" I love that. And then, yeah, like you said, no DICAS application is an island. I'm altering that a little from what you said, but yeah, there are lots of people that want to see you succeed and want to help you, get over this hurdle of moving forward towards your goals. So it is a matter though of starting the conversation, asking the question, asking for that help, and thinking even outside the box as far as what resources are available. I'm sure there are some students out there that are like, I know my campus has a writing center, but I've been writing papers for years and I never use them.
Yeah.
And this application is a little different than any paper you've ever written. The personal statement itself is different than any writing you've probably ever done. So use those
Yes.
resources, even if it's the first, maybe even only time that you reach out to them. They are there for just that assistance.
Absolutely. And that was definitely the case with me. I never had really used the resources on campus, because, I always felt pretty confident in my writing. And so it was definitely different to like reach out and ask for help and be like, I don't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
It's just unusual for me. So yeah, you just gotta do it. You'll be so glad you did.
Yes, definitely. All right. So we talked a little bit about your approach to the application already, as far as breaking things down, using resources, asking questions, all of that. Is there anything else about your approach or techniques that you want to share, or just your experience as a whole that you think would be beneficial for the next kind of group of students going through the match?
Yeah, I mean, I can start talking a little bit about how to, build a convincing case for directors, about why you're good for their program. If you'd like me to start kind of diving into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. That would be great. You did mention that you wanted to share that. So yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, of course. So I think really the first major step in convincing directors you're right for their program is knowing their program well.
Mhm.
Um, you can't build a convincing case without knowing, like knowing why you're good for the program. So, if you can't build a strong case for yourself in your own mind, you're never going to be able to do it for a director either. So I think it's really important to, if you have a program or handful of programs that you're looking at, to really go into detail in their website, and just find those little small unusual details that tell you about their program. I think I mentioned earlier that I had noticed one of the goals of my program that I got matched to was that they valued community service. And so, you may not necessarily notice that if you just did a quick scan over their website, but if you take the time to really delve in and go, oh, okay, what do they value, and what are some keywords that I'm seeing on their website and in their mission statement and vision statement and that kind of stuff. That can really tell you a lot about what they're looking for and how you can kind of capitalize on that, in your personal statement to
Mhm.
kind of bring up those keywords and phrases and, mention that, hey, I noticed that you guys are really interested in, uh, graduating students who demonstrate such and such quality, and that's something that's really important to me too. Things like that. So just, yeah, really get into detail, really find those nuggets of things that tell you about their program. And part of that can also be talking with their current interns, and talking with their director, and also going to the supervised practice fair at FNCE every year, which
Mhm.
FNCE, for those who aren't familiar, is the Food Nutrition Conference and Expo. It's a little event put on by the Academy every year, and they have a supervised practice fair where a lot of internships will come and present about their internship, and you can ask
Yeah.
them questions. So, and that's aside from open houses. So that's another great place to kind of learn more about their program, and you can mention that in your personal statement, like, hey, I met you guys at FNCE, and you mentioned this, and that really stood out to me. So just other tidbits there. And then I would say, in general, just avoid maybe the overly general statements of, well, I chose you because you offer a clinical concentration, or, like if you do want to talk about that, maybe just be careful of how you word it, really, maybe bring out other pieces of that,
Mhm.
don't just say, oh, well, I really like the clinical. Say, oh, I really like the fact that you guys have a, rotation in, endocrinology, or something specific like that, that really shows something unique, not just, well, it's just clinical. I really like that,
Mhm.
because anybody can say that. And so I feel like those are my, best tips for how to really convince the directors that you're a good fit for their program. And honestly, too, you have to feel it like inside first. I always say, like, you get a feeling about internships and whether they're right for you. And if it's not here first, you will not be able to sound convincing in your personal statement,
Mhm.
or at least not without significant work. um, so they can see through it. So just really pick places that are right for you and that really reflect who you are.
Yeah. I think I love you saying, if it doesn't feel right, go with your gut instinct and taking that into
Mm-hmm.
account. I think that's just as important. And it's hard to explain. I mean, everyone kind of knows what it is for themselves. Um, but it's just as valuable information as I can afford this tuition, or I am willing to move there, or this is the type of internship, on paper that I would love to be part of. And incorporating that into your decision making of, I do want to apply, or I am changing my ranking for this program, whatever, all of that is so like, it's just as valuable information as everything else.
Yeah.
You said something else that I wanted to comment on. Oh, I know this is, I think I say this in the personal statement workshop, where you kind of have to, in your personal statement, you kind of have to give the program, like, you have to stroke their ego a little bit. And that can feel super annoying when you're like, I am putting all of this work into telling you how great I am and why I'm a good fit and showing you the research I've done. But I also have to make you feel super cool. Like, unfortunately, you kind of do. I mean, like you said, like combing through the websites, finding more than is just on the surface and being able to speak to that. It does show that you've done your research. It shows the program, this is the level of interest that I have for you. This is how deep I have dived into what you offer. And putting in those tidbits and saying, this is like, you have this element that makes you different from all the other programs. This is why you're super cool,
Yes.
but it's also why I want to be considered for your program. And I think that's really important. And like you said, you can't stop at just the general of, I'm interested in clinical, you have a clinical emphasis. Sorry, I just knocked something over. Like, it's a match made in heaven. But when you can dive specifically, you're an academic-based hospital. The range of experiences you have looks to be a little more, wide and varied than other programs. And that's what makes your clinical emphasis different, because clinical emphases are out there to be found. So
Yes.
I like what you said about, using that as ways to stand out from the others that are applying to that program.
Absolutely.
Okay. You don't have to do this, but if you did have to go back through the application process again, is there anything you would do differently the second time around?
Yeah, I think even though I started early, I would say get more done earlier, because you cannot assume that you will have time during the semester, and the due dates just sneak up on you so fast, and everything's due in a really short period of time, from your letters of recommendation, your transcripts, just all of those little components that aren't that big in and of themselves, but when they're all put together and they're all due in the space of like 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
it just really pushes the stress level up. And so I feel like it would have been great to get some of that stuff out of the way. Some of it you can't do until the last minute, and that's totally fine, but do what you can before the crunch time happens. So I think that's definitely one thing that I would have done differently if I could go back, and just not putting anything off.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be pretty organized and not really a procrastinator, but still, I mean, I am human just like the rest of us, and there were moments where I was like, I could have done something and I didn't. And so I definitely wish, for my own sanity's sake, that I would have maybe put in a little bit more effort earlier on rather than later. So, but other than that, I had a wonderful experience. So I actually don't have a lot that I would change, but definitely that one thing.
Yeah. You were also in school while you were doing your application?
Yes,
So
I was.
never just the one thing. It's kind of like everyone has the exam and the big project the same week,
Yeah.
and they pretend you don't have anything else going on, but you do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So good to keep that in mind. So I know, or maybe you haven't started your internship yet.
No, I haven't.
Okay. When is that coming up? And just if you want to share anything that's happening, orientation or your first rotation or anything like that.
Yeah, so I will be moving to Dallas in early July, and I have to be there by a certain time just to kind of take care of some, um, you know, I don't know, just onboarding kind of stuff,
New intern
before I
thing.
ever get to rotations and stuff. But my very first day of the internship will be August 3rd, and I think the first day of actual rotations um, is maybe like a week after that or 2 weeks after that, something like that,
Mhm.
because they have to, just kind of get you oriented to the hospital and everything.
Awesome. So you'll be starting before the summer is over. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
How do you feel about relocating? Have you been to Texas, or is this going to be a whole new world for you?
Yeah, so I have been to Texas before, but never to Dallas. And the times that I was in Texas, it was pretty much just, getting off of a plane and crossing the border. So I only spent time pretty much at the El Paso airport and, a restaurant right near the border. So that's pretty much my only experience with Texas so far.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to get to move to a different place and explore Dallas. And I think it's just going to be such a great opportunity to grow and learn and really, prepare myself for, just being adventurous in the future and trying out new things.
Awesome. I love that mindset of being like, this is a new opportunity. We're going to take it and run with it, see where it takes us.
Yep.
Okay. So for every episode of the podcast, I like to share an action item so that listeners, wherever they are in their journey, can do something today that will help them with their education, their career, their application, anything like that. So do you have an action item that you can share with people?
Yeah. So kind of, going along with my theme of, convincing directors that you're right for them, I would say if you have some programs in mind, start looking at their website and writing down some things that stand out to you. And if you don't necessarily have any programs in mind yet, which is okay, we're still quite a ways out, or at least for spring match anyway, just start looking on the Academy website and figuring out what programs look like they might be interesting to you. And then you can start going into their websites and dive in a little deeper. So that's going to be, I would say, your main item of action for the upcoming weeks. And then also look up the Fancy Food Nutrition Conference and Expo to see when the next date is and see if you can join in on some of those supervised practice fairs. And again, if you do have programs in mind, look up their when their in-person or virtual open houses are and see if you can get in on one of those, just so you can start really getting a feel for what the program values and who they are, so you can start building a good case in your mind and on paper.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of Fancy, it was virtual in 2020, and the supervised practice fair is free for students. Like, you do not have to have a ticket. And the virtual option really made that feel like an actual thing, since you didn't have to go to the city that Fancy was in. And in 2021, Fancy will be virtual again. So
that's awesome. Yay.
Yeah, I will include anything. Let's see. Side note for listeners, we're recording this at the end of May. It's coming out later on. So I will have whatever information is available for Fancy and the supervised practice fair in the caption and in the show notes. So look for that so you can prepare, because that is a really great way to hit a lot of programs at once, get information, find out those key details you can use to sell yourself to the director. So that is great advice. So I'll include that information.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Annie, is there a place on social media or anywhere online that people can connect with you if they would like?
Yes, absolutely. So I recently started an evidence-based nutrition page. So you can find me at that dietetics gal. So it's that _dietetics _gal. And again, my name's Annie, and you can look me up on there, and I'll have more content coming out in the coming weeks. As I, have some time off from school finally, to start posting more stuff. I think you can message me on there, but I will have to check that again. But I will make sure to get that set up so that anyone who is interested and just has questions or whatever can reach out and get more information from me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope that students will take your tips and advice, use them on their own application, and then maybe connect with you if they want to learn more about your experience at Baylor, or just reach out to you and connect that way. So thank you so much, Annie, for sharing your experience with Application Insider. I'm so excited for you moving on to your internship soon.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
So much for sharing. You had so many great tips and things that I hadn't even thought of doing, like Seriously, the specificity of like the type of um internship that you were looking for, that was key. I mean, just
Yeah.
very first thing, I'm just like, well, this is going to be a great one if we're starting out here.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, you really have to have that because there's so many programs out there that it's like, how do you even choose? There's so many that have a clinical emphasis or community or whatever. And so I think it's not enough to just know, well, I just want to do clinical, and you really have to figure out, who you are and what you want. Because that's going to be so helpful in helping you make those decisions.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, I'm glad that knowing so well what you wanted really like landed you with an internship that's going to be such a great fit and in a new
Yes.
place. I really admire all the students that relocate to brand new cities for their internships because I mean, I did a coordinated program just at a university that was local to where I lived. And
Okay.
I don't know if I would, I can say pretty confidently, I did not have the adventurous spirit at the time that would have made that super exciting for me. Like it kind of would
Yeah.
have been, but it would have been more trepidation than excitement. So all of
Yeah.
those who are going for it, I so admire you.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. I understand it's not for everyone to relocate, but I guess for me, like, I didn't even know distance programs were a thing when I
Mm,
was first starting this. So it was always on my mind that, okay, I'm gonna have to move someday. And I always kind of wanted to, it's like, let me see like where I can go that's like far away and way different than what I've ever
uh-huh.
known.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and you found a great fit. It'll be a really
Yes.
great experience for you. Thank you, Annie, for sharing all of your tips and your suggestion. Your advice is so great for the students who will be working on their applications in upcoming matches. So all of the resources that we talked about, the application insider personal statement workshop that Annie did, the Fancy supervised practice fair, dates and links, whatever information is available right now, all of those sorts of things are in the captions. So go ahead and follow those links if you need that information to move forward on your own application. You can connect with Annie with the resources that she gave on where she can be found on social. Those links are also in the captions. You can reach out to her, you can ask her about her experience at Baylor University dietetic internship, or see what else she is sharing with her process moving forward toward her own dietetics career goals. Annie, thank you again for sharing all the resources and information and tips that you did. I know that these students who are watching will find it so helpful. Whatever you did find helpful, use on your own application, use it moving forward so that your application will also stand out. Because with this insider insight, your application is sure to stand out.